Before we begin, turn off the lights, put on your headphones, and remember, these stories are true. Tonight, through the lens of terror, you'll hear real stories from when kids were home alone and discover they were never truly alone. That you're watching Lens of Terror. Now let's begin. Story 1. The Footsteps Upstairs. I was only 8 years old the first time my parents decided to leave me home alone. To a child of that age, the house, which had always felt like a safe haven, suddenly transformed into a labyrinth of shadows and inexplicable creaks. My parents were only going to the grocery store, a quick 30-minute trip, but to me, it felt like they were crossing the ocean. 30 minutes, sweetie, my mom said, adjusting her coat while checking her purse for her keys. Don't open the door for anyone. Absolutely no one. If the intercom rings, don't answer. If someone knocks, pretend no one is home. I nodded obediently, trying to project a courage I didn't truly feel. I sat on the living room couch, the remote control gripped in my hand as if it were a defensive weapon. The TV was on at a low volume, filling the oppressive silence of the old house. Our floorboards were made of aged oak, notorious for complaining with every step taken. About 10 minutes passed. I was beginning to relax, immersed in a cartoon, when the sound happened. Thump, thump, thump. It came from upstairs, specifically from the hallway leading to the bedrooms. My body froze instantly. I tried to rationalize it. It's just the house settling, I thought. Old houses creak with temperature changes. Maybe the wind, but the sound repeated. It wasn't a metallic snap or the sound of drying wood. It was the rhythmic thud of rubber soles against timber. Footsteps, slow, heavy, deliberate. I used the remote to mute the TV. The silence that followed was so absolute that I could hear the ringing in my own ears. I sat perfectly still, not breathing, staring at the ceiling as if my eyes could pierce through the plaster. Re-yike, the sound of a drawer being opened. The drawer of the dresser in my room, which always stuck a little and made that characteristic high-pitched screech. My heart raced. I felt cold sweat trickling down my back. I grabbed my phone with trembling hands and texted my mother. Are you back yet? Are you upstairs? The seconds dragged on. No response. The red icon didn't appear. Then the worst happened. A whisper, soft as a cold breeze, drifted down the stairs. It wasn't a random noise. It was my name. Someone or something was up there, going through my things and calling for me. I didn't think. Survival instinct took over. I ran to the front door, fumbled with the deadbolt, and bolted out, barefoot, feeling the cold asphalt under my feet. I ran to the neighbor's house and pounded on their door until they let me in. When my parents returned and the police were called, the house was empty. No door or window had been forced. But when we went upstairs, my heart stopped. My dresser drawer was wide open. In the middle of my clothes sat a small toy soldier I had lost months ago, positioned exactly in the center, as if someone wanted to make sure I found it. Story 2. The Man in the Backyard. At 10 years old, I considered myself the master of independence. My parents worked late during the summer, and I loved the freedom. The house was my kingdom, the video game console was my subject, and the fridge was at my disposal. But summer has a strange way of turning sunlight into long, threatening shadows. It was a hot July afternoon. I was in the middle of an intense match of Call of Duty when a primal sense of discomfort washed over me. You know that feeling when you know you're not alone, even though you should be? I slowly turned my face toward the large glass window facing the backyard. The sun was beginning to set, painting the garden in hues of orange and gray. And there he was, a man. He was tall, wearing a dark coat that looked far too heavy for the heat. He stood perfectly still by the wooden fence, about 10 yards from the window. He didn't move. He wasn't trying to hide. He simply stared at the house with an intensity that seemed to pierce the glass. I froze. My fingers slipped off the controller. I wanted to look away, but fear kept me locked on that figure. For a whole minute, neither of us moved. Then, I slowly slid off the couch, hiding below the window line. My heart was beating so hard I could feel the pulse in my neck. He'll go away, I repeated to myself. It's just a drifter. He'll move on. Thud, thud, thud. The sound came from the back door. 3 slow, rhythmic knocks. Panic hit me like a punch. He had crossed the yard without me hearing a single footstep on the dry grass. The knocking continued, getting louder and louder, making the wooden door vibrate in its frame. Then the voice came, a raspy, emotionless voice that seemed to scratch the air. "Hey kid, I know you're home. I saw the TV lights." I didn't wait to hear anything else. I stood up and bolted for the hallway bathroom, the only room in the house with a solid internal lock. I locked the door, climbed into the bathtub, and called 911. I cried silently, trying to keep my breathing under control so the operator could hear me. "Please, there's a man trying to get in. He knows I'm here." It took the police 8 minutes to arrive. To me, it felt like 8 hours. I heard the sound of sirens, and shortly after, the sound of heavy boots and shouted orders. When I finally came out, the officers told me no one was in the backyard. However, they found something. In the damp dirt near the back door, there were deep footprints. They weren't walking away. They were all pointed inward, as if the man had spent a long time leaning against the door, just listening to my breathing on the other side. Story 3, the phone call. The silence of an empty house has its own sound. At 9 years old, I was learning to live with that sound every afternoon between the end of school and my parents' arrival. I liked the silence until the day it was interrupted by the shrill ringing of the landline in the kitchen. I answered promptly, "Hello." There was no immediate response, just a background static noise. I was about to hang up, thinking it was a telemarketing bot when I heard it. Breathing. It was slow, deep, and sounded like someone exerting physical effort. The sound was so clear it felt like the person was whispering directly into my ear. "Hello." I asked again, my voice rising a pitch. "I can see you," the voice whispered. It was a male voice, slurred, almost affectionate in a sickening way. I gave a nervous laugh, the standard defense mechanism of a scared child. "Very funny, Uncle Mark. You can stop now." I hung up the phone. My heart was racing, but I tried to convince myself it was just a prank from a school friend. 5 minutes later, the phone rang again. This time, I didn't say a word. I just held the receiver to my ear. The breathing was there. "Heavier now." "I'm still watching," the voice said. "You look good in blue." I was wearing a blue t-shirt. I felt a hollow pit in my stomach. I ran to the front window and pulled the curtains. The street was deserted. No parked cars that didn't belong to neighbors. No one walking. I looked at the garden behind the bushes. Nothing. That's when I noticed something that made me lose my breath. A cold wind was blowing inside the hallway. I turned slowly. My bedroom door was ajar. I always kept it closed to keep the cat out. I entered the room and saw it. The window, which I was absolutely sure I had locked before leaving for school, was wide open. Absolute panic set in. I ran to the kitchen, grabbed the largest knife I could find, and locked myself in the broom closet. I stayed there in a fetal position until I heard my father's car pull into the driveway. The police tried to trace the number, but it came from a burner phone. The forensic tech who examined the window found something that gives me nightmares to this day. There were finger marks on the glass, but they weren't just smudges. They were clear fingerprints, left from the outside in, as if someone had spent a long time gripping the edge of the window, waiting for the right moment to climb in. Story 4. Someone was already inside. This is the story that still makes me check the attic of every house I live in. I was 11. My parents had gone to a gala dinner, and for the first time, trusted me to spend the whole night alone. I followed the protocol to the letter. I locked the front door, the back door, checked the downstairs windows, and turned on the perimeter alarm system. I felt grown up, responsible. I made a snack and went to my room upstairs. Around 10 p.m., I went to the bathroom to brush my teeth. The silence of the house was comforting until it was broken by a metallic sound. Click. The living room TV downstairs had just turned on. I froze, the toothbrush still in my mouth. I knew I had turned that TV off. I heard it changing channels, the characteristic static hiss between frequencies. Then, the volume started to rise. 10, 20, 30. The sound of an old game show filled the house. I left the bathroom and walked to the top of the stairs. From where I stood, I could see the blue glow of the TV reflected on the living room walls. Then I heard a laugh, a deep, guttural male laugh. It didn't come from the TV. It came from the couch. I didn't wait to see who it was. I ran to my parents' bedroom, which had the heaviest door in the house, and locked it. I called my dad on my cell phone, sobbing so hard I could barely speak. "Dad, someone's in the living room." The TV turned on by itself. I heard someone laugh. He told me to stay calm and that he was already calling the police and heading back. He stayed on the line with me. While I waited, the sound of the TV downstairs suddenly stopped. The silence that followed was 1,000 times worse. I heard the stairs creak, one by one. Creak, creak, creak. The footsteps stopped exactly on the other side of the bedroom door. I held my breath, the phone pressed against my ear. There was a soft, almost polite knock on the wooden door. And then a whisper that haunts me to this day. "I know you're alone now, little one." Police sirens erupted in the distance, quickly increasing in volume. The footsteps hurried away from the door. When the police stormed the house, they found me in shock. They searched every room. No one was in the living room, the kitchen, or the bedrooms. But when one of the officers climbed onto a chair to open the attic hatch in the hallway, he found the horror. A man was up there. He had a thin mattress, empty food wrappers, and dozens of photos of me and my family taped to the roof beams. He had been living up there for at least 2 weeks. He watched us through the light fixture holes. He knew our schedules, our routines. He hadn't broken in that night. He had been waiting for the moment I was finally alone. Those were 4 terrifying true stories from when kids were home alone that if these stories unsettled you, imagine how the people who live them feel. Because some fears never leave. That if you enjoyed looking through the lens of terror, make sure to subscribe for more true horror stories. New nightmares every week. Sleep well that you'll need it.